there. Hello out there.
Hello, universe.
Hello, universe.
Welcome to our webinar.
Welcome to our webinar. It's going to be a fun time. I don't know.
It
I'm
is
excited.
indeed.
Are you excited?
No, not at all. No, I'm terribly excited. Yeah, it's really good to have you here, Dr. Lisa Augustine. We have a comment from another Augustine. Hello.
Not my mom in the chat.
I love that support, man. Hello, Leonie. Good to have you here.
I'm very
glad you're excited. We are excited.
We are so excited.
Okay. So what are we talking about today? Finding balance in your well-being.
Oh, yes.
So if you don't know me already, I'm Daniel. My background's in psychology. I've done some cool stuff in the NPO sector. And most recently, I'm the CEO and founder of Psyche Innovations. Who do we have with us today? Dr. Lisa Augustine. Lisa is a medical doctor and research fellow from Johannesburg. She's currently positioned at the Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation at Boston University. She earned a medical degree from WITS in 2014 and a certificate in mental health rehabilitation from the University of Maine in 2022. That's in the USA. She has since worked in psychiatric rehabilitation services in Boston, Massachusetts, serving young adults with mental illness and their families. She began a research fellowship in 2023. Her research is focused on depression and suicidality among medical students in training. Such a stressful period. Lisa loves people and their stories, the outdoors, and baking sourdough with the starter her mom gave her. I love that. If she had a superpower, it would be able to go back in time and meet everyone she knows as kids. Isn't that sweet? I love it. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel privileged to be on this platform. Absolutely love what Psyche Innovations stands for and your values and what you're trying to achieve. So happy to be here, and hopefully we can impart some knowledge today and have fun in the process.
Awesome. I forgot to show all Lisa's fancy accolades. There she is. Got all the things. My bad.
Thank you.
Have you secretly been a model in your extra time? That headshot's just amazing.
No, I was not modeling, but I was actually in a singing group when I was like 12, 13 years old. It never came to fruition. We broke up. The singing group broke up. But, media, entertainment.
I love it. I wish I had a voice for singing. I don't have a voice for radio, and I definitely don't have a face for television.
You know what? You have a voice and you have a face for workshops. So here we are.
And webinars, fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about, very briefly, what Psyche Innovations is and does, and then we'll move on to the domains of well-being, the importance of balance in life, how finding balance in your wellness domains is a dynamic process, and the importance of rest and recovery. So what is Psyche Innovations? We are a digital mental health company. We've created the Psyche Mental Health app, and it's all about making evidence-based psychological skills accessible and affordable around the world. So what is Psyche Mental Health? It is a tool for assessing your mental health, learning psychological skills to promote those domains, and we're going to be talking about those domains today, tracking your progress, setting some goals, and learning a whole lot of cool stuff along the way. Right, the domains of well-being, today's focus. What are the 8 domains of wellness? Lisa.
Daniel, I've been pondering this and how we got to choose the topic of the 8 domains for this webinar today. I kind of felt at some point that I'd kick myself in the foot because this is such an extensive topic. So I'm really hoping today that we can cover things that are meaningful for participants. And yeah, like I said, impart some knowledge and have some fun along the way. So there are so many ways that we can conceptualize wellness. And I think the point of today's webinar is really to orient participants to Psyche Mental Health's model of the 8 domains and some of the skills that they're able to kind of develop to be able to thrive in these domains. So we'll explore how these 8 domains can be used as a tool to live life to the fullest and to harness and build upon one's strengths, but also to identify, learn, and grow in areas that may need a little bit more work, right? That's why it's such a great tool. So I think
100%.
conceptualizing kind of wellness this way helps us make more deliberate decisions about how we spend our time, right? How we expend our energy. But importantly, and something that I really want to emphasize, is that using models like this as tools can help us to healthily strive towards reaching our goals. So a big takeaway, right, is that we're not striving for perfection in any of these domains. We're striving for balance. We're striving for resilience. And we're embracing the beautiful learning process and recognizing the need for rest and recovery along the way. Okay, so to answer your question, what are these 8 domains that we're talking about? All right, so we can see a beautiful image depicting the 8 domains. We're going to sort of delve into a bit deeper later on in the presentation. But to start off, on the top left-hand side, we can see in green the domain of flourishing. And this really refers to how satisfied we are with our life, right? How optimistic we are about our lives and how we perceive our current success. Purple, my favorite color, the domain of peace, right? And really, mindfulness and spirituality are key elements in this domain. They help us to recognize our experiences as being part of the process of growth and self-discovery, and really having a deeper understanding of our individual purpose in this life. Really building skills in this domain can help us put experiences into perspective and have clarity and calmness through life's up and downs.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. In turquoise, the domain of connection. So this really refers to social skills and the building of quality relationships that we hold in our lives. In yellow, the domain of mood is something that I have to constantly work on, right? This domain really encompasses skills that help us manage our emotions and self-regulate them in different environments and through different experiences. The domain of resilience in red refers to our coping skills that help us get through challenging times. The skill of self-compassion, and yes, it is a skill, is one of the building blocks of this domain. And it helps us forgive ourselves, show compassion, and reach a level of acceptance where maybe we aren't reaching our expectations that we often set for ourselves. In orange, we have the domain of focus. So important skills here include problem solving, but also creativity. Kind of doesn't really go together, don't you think? Like focus, this serious word, and then this idea of creativity. They seem as if they're two separate concepts, but very much intertwined and important.
100%. Yeah, creativity and motivation and problem solving. They feel like the sort of intellectual parts of wellness. And as we'll discuss later on, like we're using these, beautifully colored, nice names for these domains, but of course there's a lot of interconnectedness between these things, which we'll talk about more later. But yeah, focus, that's your problem solving. We all do that all the time. And part of problem solving is a creative process, right? There was this interesting intelligence test. I'm just thinking about this that I came across.
Yeah.
And they asked young people, so kids, how many uses they can think of for a brick. and like they listed hundreds, and then later they did a study and they asked adults, like how many uses are there for a brick? And an adult's like, you build things, you build a wall, like maybe 5 things. And children, that creativity is so great. They're like, oh, you can use it for smashing bugs and for building bridges and for, you can break it up into little bits and I don't know, make clay. See, I'm even struggling. And
Yeah.
I love that creative part of wellness. And it's something we've got to be intentional about, but I'm derailing.
Not a derailment, like such an important point as we recognize that our wellness and these domains look different across the lifespan. And really holding on to that nugget of wisdom that our creativity is so broad and all we want to do is explore as kids because we're learning about how to interact with our immediate environment and greater environment. And how as adults, everything kind of seems to shrink, kind of gets smaller and smaller so that we're hyper fixated on, kind of reaching our goals and our individualistic path that we may struggle to be creative. This is something that needs to be practiced. So that wasn't at all a derailment, and I think so important for us to keep in mind. And then, of course, we have mastery in pink. And this domain really refers to our sense of self-worth. So the belief in our ability to be able to accomplish things. The final domain that we'll dive into deeper a bit later, the physical domain. You know that this is one of my favorites, Dan. We'll get into it a bit later, but nutrition, sleep, and exercise, quite possibly one of the most important foundational domains to ensure your wellness in other areas.
Yeah, now I'm really excited for this one because we talked about this and discussed it earlier, and your dad's take on it and our take on it,
Oh, yeah.
What does your dad say about the jars?
Okay. So if people who are joining will be able to see eight jars on this slide, right? And they represent all of the domains that we kind of just discussed. And what you'll notice is some of them are more full than others. And so the story of my dad, I think I was like in late adolescence, and my dad, I don't know why we were having this discussion, but he talks about 4 pillars or 4 cylinders of wellness that kind of he pays attention to, or he had paid attention to at that stage of his life when I was a bit younger. And at that time, he mentioned 4 things. He's like, Lee Babes. He calls me Lee Babes. That's my nickname that my dad calls me. He's like, as long as I know that I am, giving time to my family, my friends, my occupation and work life, and my spirituality, if I can get a grasp on those 4, I know that I'm good. And it's okay if some of them move up or down and some of them are higher than the rest or lower than the rest. That's just an indicator to me that I need to fill the one that's low up a little bit. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I felt like I was juggling so many jars as like in my late adolescence, there was schoolwork, there was family and friends, like the social domain, I was volunteering, there was like physical activity. It just looked so different from what my dad's idea of like his wellness was, at the stage of life that he was at. And so importantly to notice is that not only did I feel like I was juggling more jars or trying to fill more jars, but also my jars looked different than my dad's. And now that we've kind of briefly gone over the domains, like in the previous slide, like I kind of want to know from the audience that's joining today, like if you could pick 3 jars, just 3, that you feel like you are thriving in, those areas in which you are thriving in, could you put that in the comments? Like I would love to see areas in which people feel that they are thriving.
And what would your jars be that you're thriving in?
I wish I could show a picture of, I took the quiz on the app, and actually I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up the picture that I took. At the time, I had just finished writing a very difficult exam. I was exhausted. I had expended all my energy in prep for this exam, And I was really in the recovery stage. I was coming out of a traumatic experience. And so I was spending a lot of time with friends. And so my connection jar was very full, right? I felt like because I was on the good side of recovery, my mood jar was actually fuller than the rest. And the mastery jar. So I did it, I felt like I sat the test and that was an accomplishment for me. And, I had this belief in myself that I could move forward, like after taking this exam. So connections, mood, and mastery were pretty high. What was low? Focus. I was so mentally exhausted. Like, I felt that I couldn't apply myself really, like academically or like, related to work.
Been there, done that,
Yeah,
got the t-shirt.
yeah. Resilience. I felt like I had been resilient. And again, like I say, I was in recovery. It was pretty low. Yeah. And also my physical health took a knock. So I was low. I was low on that level. I'm interested to hear. Can you see responses from
Yeah,
anyone?
we've got from Leonie, our number one supporter, doing well in physical peace and resilience. We have one from
Wonderful.
Kaylee saying, I would say connection, focus, and physical domain. There's a lot of physical here. And then we got one from Courtney saying physical, focus, and connection. I'm also feeling physical. I'm doing really well in that jar at the moment. I'm training for a marathon. I feel like I bring this up in every webinar.
Good for you.
And I don't want to talk about the ones I'm not doing so well in, but physical seems to be doing well at the moment. Oh, we got one from Jesse here. Mood, peace, and mastery. Adding some different ones to the mix here. Sure, maybe I should get some advice from Jesse for the peace domain. My peace domain could do with some work, being present, being calm. Yeah, it's good to hear everyone's feedback.
What I think is so beautiful is that you notice that like physical was like pretty common and people really feel like they're thriving in that domain, but other domains differ. So we can see like it fluctuates, right? Certain things, we may be thriving in certain areas and maybe not so much in others. And that's different depending on our circumstances and what we're facing.
Yeah, 100%. And we see that as our lives go through these ups and downs, and we're the student, then we're working, then we're at the bottom again, then we're at the top, and it's this kind of dynamic process, which we talk about a bit later as well. Visiwa said physical, peace, and resilience. Wow, physical is really coming out a lot, and resilience, I love it. Everyone's tough here. Tabatso is saying focus, mood, and connection. Love it. Connection's such an important one. And I think it's so easy to neglect that one sometimes, not putting in the time to see the people who are really important to us. And like we said, how they're all so connected. In the peace domain, we also talk about, mindfulness and being in the present moment. And if I'm honest, that mindfulness and connection, being present with people and friends, like if I'm really stressed, which is then connected to the resilience domain, if I'm not managing my stress, I struggle to be mindful. And then like I'm there with friends or family, but I'm not really there. And similarly, the struggling is connected, but also the thriving is connected. When I'm with my family or my friends, I also relax, I de-stress, I can become more present. So I notice maybe that I'm struggling, but then the jars start to fill because I'm putting that time in.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, Lisa.
The interconnectedness is such an important part of this model and this tool to kind of recognize, right? And you said, you may find that when you're stressed or you've got like a lot of other commitments that you're not spending as much time with family and friends, or you may not be present in those times, but then you also know that spending time with family and friends re-energizes you and rejuvenates you, right? And I think what's important to mention here is the important skill of having compassion for ourselves when it looks different. So we recognize that all of those pieces intersect, but then also being cognizant that, okay, maybe I was at the family function, but I was really thinking about, this exam or this meeting or this webinar that I was preparing for. So I wasn't like really fully present in that. But being able to take a step back and be mindful of what that situation was for what it was. And when the webinar's finished, maybe this Saturday, being more intentional about being present in spaces with family and friends, and then really using that domain to rejuvenate and recover for the next webinar. So I think it's just so interesting, like how these domains interconnect. And again, how we can use this model to inform our actions, right? And to inform how we show up in spaces and for the people in our lives and for ourselves. So great point.
Awesome. I wanted to move on.
Yeah, for sure. And so,
what is this all about, Lisa? Teach us.
Dan, I was saying when we started, there are so many models of wellness. And I think it's so great that these resources kind of exist for people, right? But one thing that kind of stuck out to me is that it's all good and well to understand like what pieces you need to live a fulfilled life, but nobody really tells us how. Like, okay, so now we know what we need. Like, how do we get there? And so I thought it was important to contrast Peggy Swarbrick's model of wellness. Peggy Swarbrick was, or rather is, has a doctorate in occupational therapy, and she devised this model to actually facilitate the recovery of people experiencing mental illness and substance abuse concerns. And really, this model identifies what people kind of need to live a fulfilled life. And some of the domains that she mentioned are physical wellness, social wellness, intellectual wellness, emotional and environmental wellness, spiritual, financial, and occupational wellness. So you kind of need to be thriving in these domains to feel as if you are well. You have a holistic sense of wellness, right? And I thought that this was beautiful because she used the circle and interlinked them as opposed to the triangle that people may traditionally know from Abraham Maslow's, depiction.
Hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy of needs. Yes, that's the one. And why I thought it was important to contrast this is that in the psyche domains that we've briefly kind of visited in the previous slides, it's important to note that we're going to get an orientation to the skills. So like what we need to be able to develop to thrive in those different areas of life. And so that's why I just wanted to contrast them in case anybody was like, wait, I don't really recognize some of these domains. Like they may have seen Maslow's hierarchy or may have seen Swarbrick's model of wellness. And this is how they're interconnected. Using the app and building upon specific skills help you thrive. And these all overlap. It's just to let participants know that there are many models for wellness, but to action steps and to build skills is one thing. It's the how. How do we achieve wellness?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the first step is knowing what the building blocks or the map looks like, and then it's moving towards it. And I think in the beginning, it can be like, oh, wow, there's all these things. This feels overwhelming. How do I work at all of these? How do I make all the jars full? And that can feel a little bit overwhelming at times. But the fact that they're connected, I think, is so great because it means that by working on one, we, indirectly working on the others.
100%, 100%. I think one of the misconceptions actually of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where he put the physical and security needs, like he puts them into a pyramid. One of the misconceptions is you kind of need to achieve like the bottom level before moving up. And I think the bottom level is critical. So physical wellness, like you need food, water, and shelter to survive, like the basic needs need to be met. But on the other levels, you don't have to achieve the level before moving up towards self-actualization. actually this is a process that happens together. So what you've mentioned here is that if you build upon skills that help you thrive in one domain, it's going to spill over into other domains, right? And this is the interconnectedness of this tool.
Yeah. And I love that sort of like bird's eye view, taking the time to, like a tool like ours, or, not trying to push our app 100%, there's other
Yeah.
tools and ways to look at your wellness, but to get this overall bird's eye view look and be like, okay, hey, this is where I'm doing well. This is where I'm struggling. Maybe I should shift some of my attention from here and effort from here to somewhere else.
What I
And
love,
that's the
I'm sorry.
wellness aspect of it. Go, Lisa, tell us.
What you're saying about the bird's eye view thing, like what I love about using models like this, right, is we can be both observers and participants in our own lives, of our own lives and in our own lives. And I think conceptualizing our wellness, right, in these different areas, like allows us the opportunity to zoom out. So if you're taking assessments like that, you can have an objective eye, even though some experiences are very emotional, very moving, very difficult. Like the tangible experiences of living through something are very real. But as humans, we have this ability to also be objective and to observe ourselves in these experiences. And so I think having an understanding of like where we fall, how our jars are filled, helps us take a step back, look at those jars and think, oh my goodness, okay, maybe one of these needs a little bit more watering because I've been neglecting it, right? And so this bird's eye view idea of how you can use this tool, I think is so useful.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, as I said before, once we know what the domains are and how they're interconnected, and we'll talk about this more later, but I'm just excited to say it, is that we can like stack things together that
Yeah.
are complementary. I can go for a walk outside. I get that spiritual being in nature thing, which is super important to me, while I'm getting some physical activity going for that walk. I can drag along a friend and get a bit of social as well. So like I'm filling a few jars at the same time. Not
Oh,
that
yeah.
you have to, you can focus on one at a time. But I really like that. I figured out what fills my jars, and then I prioritize putting some effort into them.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's activities and skills that really help with this. And we have a question here for the audience. How can you see that your domains are working together in your daily life? Lisa, how do you see that your domains are working together in your daily life?
Yeah. The one example that comes to mind immediately is if I have a busy schedule, and this may be on the negative side of like how not paying attention to one domain may impact other domains, right, for the rest of the day. I've noticed this of myself. And sometimes if I have quite a hefty schedule, like many meetings or commitments for the day, I won't plan my meals properly, right? So I don't have the usual time I do have to have breakfast or to have lunch. And sometimes if I'm not intentional about making the time to eat, I forget to eat or I delay eating. And then I'm just hangry. So how does this impact other domains, right? I'm not able to focus for sustained period of times, right? And really my output may not be as productive. My social connections, may not thrive given that I'm hungry and hangry and not the nicest person to be around. I may be more subdued and want to kind of be on my own and by myself, right? And in not doing my best work, maybe that impacts my self-confidence, like for the day, like I'm now really hard on myself because I wasn't able to focus and I wasn't able to submit or complete that task. And it rolls over into tomorrow and I'm going to be more stressed than I would have been. So had I just had that breakfast or made the time to eat something, you see like the trickle down effect and how it impacts kind of other domains from day to day. Yeah, so that's definitely how some domains may work together, not in the best way.
Yeah, I feel you. If I don't sleep well, and which is obviously in the physical domain, I feel it leaking into focus, my ability to concentrate and solve problems, and then a little bit cranky in the mood domain, and how well am I
Mm.
managing and understanding my emotions? And I, I don't want it to seem like, you have to be perfect in these domains and, like, oh, they always got to be full. And I know we've already said that, but the understanding that I didn't sleep well, I'm going to be tired. I give myself grace. I try to be like, okay, Daniel, you're probably not going to focus as well today. Like, that's okay. Take it easy. Don't overdo it. Don't overcook it. Like,
Yeah.
you realize what the building blocks are. Doesn't mean I mustn't exercise. Doing a bit of exercise is probably going to help me sleep better tonight. But like, don't overdo it. Don't overstress myself. And I find that works and helps me a lot. We have a lovely long comment here by Courtney. Yes to all your wisdom and examples. Thank you, Dan and Lisa. Love Psyche's organization of domains to account for attention/presence, as well as addressing the depths of self-worth, self-efficacy, self-compassion that aren't as explicit in Swarbrick's. Excited to learn more about Psyche innovations. Be well, talk soon. I love it. That's such a
Oh,
nice comment. Oh, fills my heart. Thank you.
same. Oh
All
man.
right, let's keep going. We wanted to talk briefly about some of the domains in more detail. Um,
We did.
so the first two we can discuss is flourish and connection. We touched on these at the beginning, but flourish is really about, do you feel you're reaching your potential in life? Do you feel hopeful about the future? And are you satisfied with your life? And I don't know how you fill these domains. Again, we're not going to be able to give like a
Yeah.
million cool examples and answers here, but I'm just wondering, like, what do you do, Lisa, to try work on this domain?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I find the flourishing domain to be more of like a higher grade domain for me. I find it to be kind of this all encompassing, kind of like in Maslow's hierarchy, like the self-actualized person, like the highest level, like when you feel like you're flourishing. I looked up Dina's flourishing scale. So it's like a brief 8-item scale that's used to measure flourishing, right? In areas that are pretty broad, flourishing across relationships, self-esteem, purpose, and optimism. And some of the items, like, can I read them out? For example, like, I lead a purposeful and meaningful life. My social relationships are supportive and rewarding. I am engaged and interested in my daily activities. I actively contribute to the happiness and well-being of others. I am competent and capable in the activities that are important to me. I'm a good person and live a good life. I'm optimistic about my future. People respect me, right? These are really, really big items. And really for me, I find that adopting a positive mindset and coming into interactions with people, into interactions with spaces, new and old concepts, adopting that positive outlook is an enabler for me. It enables me to feel like I'm being successful across those different areas. So I would say, and it is a skill that needs to be practiced because, like I say, I'm always trying to kind of turn down the volume on the negative self-evaluation, right? And like self-compassion just keeps coming up, Dan. I don't know what it is, but being compassionate of yourself. So even if something has not gone your way, and say I missed the meal and it impacted my work and it impacted my social connections, just what you referred to in our, like on the previous slide, like giving yourself some grace and some self-compassion, like, okay, today didn't go 100%, but tomorrow's a new day. So it's different from toxic positivity, like which is just completely like ignoring the negative pieces, because we do have to reflect on what hasn't gone well, right? And but I think like that's really like I've really tried to nurture that positive mindset, and it's done well. Like I that's what I do, to answer your question.
I love it. I think it's so easy to get caught in only seeing the negatives, like, and there are a lot out there in the external world, internally, the things we're struggling with. And it really does take intentionality to focus on, hey, what went well? What can I learn from it? What am I hopeful for? What am I optimistic about? Celebrating the wins, like, oh, you got that promotion, or hey, you made a friend, or you managed to finally go for that walk you were wanting to do. Like, that's awesome. That's the meaty, juicy, awesome parts of life. And that's what flourishing is all about. It's like, what does success and happiness and quality of life look like to you, and moving towards that. And knowing that sometimes life isn't always going to go your way, and kind of keeping going, which also connects with the resilience domain, which we'll talk about. But to stop us going into too much detail, connection, this is such an important one. It's feeling accepted and feeling like you belong in your family, in your groups, at work. It's learning the social skills to be able to communicate how we feel to the people that are close to us, and to nurture and grow those relationships. I don't know if there are things that you do, Lisa, to try grow the connection domain. That's a sprinkling of wisdom.
I think adopting this a curiosity of others it's an important building block. I do want to mention this. Like, I think the US Surgeon General last year basically drafted a report that was titled like our epidemic of like loneliness and isolation. And yes, this was kind of post-pandemic, right? But these trends in social isolation and loneliness had been recognized even before the pandemic, right? We acknowledge that we're in an age of social media. You can have 10,000, 1 million, 5 million followers, right? Connections across social media platforms, and yet still experience a sense of loneliness, a sense of isolation, confusion around whether or not you belong in certain spaces. And I think like social isolation, connectedness, loneliness, belonging as constructs, like they're individual constructs that I think, it's kind of beyond the scope of our presentation today. But what's important to recognize is how highly correlated they are to mental health outcomes. So depression, anxiety, even suicidality. And so we do have to be intentional about nurturing quality relationships, not number of connections. I met someone at a conference a couple of weeks ago. And I just I observed myself, right, in my response to this person, because they had noticed me spending like quite a lot of time with like certain individuals to kind of meet. And the purpose of this conference was really I wanted to expand my network and meet people, but this person gave advice like, you need to spend less time. It needs to be like in and out, like leave them a one-liner that's going to make them remember you, and then move on to the next person because there's not enough time. And I recognized like a feeling in my stomach, like a little knot. And I was like, but that's not me. And what's the point if I'm going to give a one-liner that's not going to be able to capture me? And I'm certainly not going to get to know anything more about them. Like, I'd rather hear about the fact that, okay, you're this professional with all these accolades, but you're also a dad who coaches soccer during the summers for like his son's soccer camps. Like, that's what's going to make me remember you, right? It's the quality of the relationships. And so being intentional, y'all, and being curious to find out about others, like that's how you can start that.
I love that. I've had similar experiences, and as I get older and supposedly more mature, I realize it's about the few things that really add value to my life,
Yeah.
and focusing my time and effort on those things.
Mm.
I'm actually going to skip forward to our slide talking about change is constant and wellness is a dynamic process. I feel that the domains have so much weight to them, and we could spend like all night talking about them. But I wanted to move on to this, and my eye straight away goes to this amazing point that you were talking about when we were discussing this webinar. Wellness doesn't equal happiness. Yeah, I
Oh,
think. Yeah. What does that mean?
I think it's such a common misconception that wellness is the same thing as happiness, right? Happiness is an emotion. It's one type of emotion in a bucket of like so many other kinds of emotive experiences that we can have across the human experience, right? Wellness is bigger. It's bigger. Emotion is one component. It's one bucket, right? One domain of wellness. And I like to think of it, Dan, as we all have a baseline, and that baseline looks different, right? And we have like a sinus wave that's like vibrating on a frequency on this baseline. And life may take us to highs, and it may take us to places where we experience lows. And so the amplitude of our weight changes. Like maybe I'll have an experience that makes me feel absolutely elated. I get some good news, or I achieve something, or the day just goes really well, and my wave goes completely up. And what people don't always recognize is that staying in a state of elation is also something that can distract you from focus, right? Or from just keep your energy away from other domains that you can be kind of dedicating your energy to. And so I think conceptualizing wellness as using different skills to help you return to a healthy baseline and not keep you at the extremes is something that I like to think about. That's how I like to conceptualize it. Not to hold you into despair, recognize that despair is a natural human experience, but having the tools to be able to navigate your way back to baseline, right? Quicker, in a healthy way. Yeah. And so I thought it was important to touch on that because they're not the same. They're not the same. Happiness is one of the emotive experiences that we have. Wellness is a much bigger concept.
Yeah, I love that. I love all the fancy words and terms you use there. I'm just trying to think like, how do I simplify this? You know, yes, sine waves. I'm like, damn, you can tell you're a medical doctor with all these fancy
I didn't mean
achievements.
to make it complicated. There's a line. Sometimes we go
What
above
I
it,
got from
sometimes we go
that.
below.
Hey, no more fancy talk here. No more fancy talk.
Okay,
What
cancel
I
it.
got from it is it's not normal to be happy all the time. It's
Yeah.
kind of like what I'm getting from that. And focusing on wellness is something one should do even when we're struggling and we are unhappy. Like when you're down in the dumps, focusing on the wellness domains is as important as when you feel like you're at the top of the mountain. Um, that's that's what I got from your very complicated but very fancy. I'm just joking, but yeah, wellness is more important than happiness, and feeling like we don't have to thrive all the time. Like, and what even is thriving? That looks different for different people. Um, and I think we can get caught in these comparisons all the time. Like I'm guilty of it. People look at me and go, "Oh, Daniel, like you're amazing. You're doing all these amazing things." And then I look at, Dr. Lisa Augustine. I'm like, "Oh, am I really doing that well?" Oh, I'm
Same.
picking on you. I'm picking on you. But yeah, how do you deal with that?
It's a very personal, I'll add a personal touch to this, and it's a constant work that I feel like I need to do. Yeah, not striving for perfection. So not trying to fill every jar and keep them all full. Like I just I don't think it's healthy, right? And I think for all the other maladaptive perfectionists, like we do want to strive for the best, like across all domains. But recognizing that if you're trying to push so hard across so many different areas, like the human body is only capable of so much, and burnout is inevitable, right? And so I think, like I said at the beginning, the goal needs to be for a healthy balance. It's not to try to fill all of the jars and to keep them full. And you know what? Sometimes some of them, a lot of them will be full and you will be thriving. Go off, like, but be aware of your energy levels, like have that self-awareness and the ability to self-reflect, to say, I've been going at 100 miles an hour for like 2 months now. Okay, it would be so good to afford myself the opportunity to recover or rest. And that's why after huge periods of productivity, it's important to be intentional about taking breaks, right? Rejuvenating. And so, yeah, not striving for perfection. It's a very difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, I love that. Taking rest, prioritizing what's important, knowing that we can't be sprinting all the time, not putting unrealistic expectations on ourselves. Like if you're going through the wars, you're not expected to be CEO of USA, when like we're having terrible storms at the moment, life is like that. There's going to be storms and there's going to be tough times. And sometimes getting through and keeping your sanity, like that's thriving.
I also just like want to address the pace, because I think this tool can be so useful, but it can also like send you down. I would say this is what mistakes that I've made like over time. And I think like we can relate on this, is like, okay, you build the belief in yourself that you can accomplish something, and then you continue to want more, right? So you continue to push yourself. So let's say, okay, I get into jogging. First, I'm walking around the block, and then I'm jogging around the block, and then I'm making some good time around the block. And now I'm like running 5Ks, like pretty easily. I'm not going to enter a marathon, and like running is all that I do. And I am not like calling my family on Sundays because I need to wake up early and run my 5Ks because I've got this marathon. And then I'm like, I want to set up a fundraiser to raise funds, like, because I'm running. And I just think being cognizant of that too is that exhausting yourself in one domain, because they are so interconnected, can pull you away from other things that you could be focusing on. Or there's nothing wrong with having a big goal like that and setting a big goal like that for yourself. I just think if you are setting goals where you also have other priorities, it can start to look a bit murky, right? And so being cognizant of that, not exhausting yourself like across the domains, is something good to keep in mind.
I love that. And that kind of relates to our question. Do you find your priorities regarding well-being change depending on the stage of life you're in, and how so? I love this question, and it makes me think of a friend of mine. I won't say his name, but he's just had a baby girl, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
And now he's shifting more into dad mode. And this baby girl he's just had is like, super high priority, super important. Before she existed, it was just, him and his wife and his family.
Yeah.
And now suddenly everything shifted. And that's good. That's, whether you're trying to be an entrepreneur, or you're trying to finish your studies, or you're trying to get a job, or you've just had a baby, or whatever the big challenge or important thing is at the moment, appreciating that the energy has to move and ebb and flow, and not being too hard on yourself when you're like, maybe my sleep isn't too great at the moment because I'm studying super hard for exams, or, trying to hustle on this job or whatever. But then, going back and filling that jar later when you can, but not running it too empty as well. You can't just be like, oh, it's exam, sleep doesn't exist. All I have is Red Bull. Like
The
caffeine
caffeine,
is
love
my blood
affair.
now. Yeah, exactly. And I using a tool that, whether it's our app or something else that helps you see, hey, how empty is my jar,
Yeah,
um, can be helpful because we're really bad as humans at self-assessing, how am I really doing? Because you're probably doing better than you think in some areas, and maybe you're not doing as well as you'd like in others.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's super helpful.
No, I ate humble pie the first time I took a wellness inventory. I did. I think I took SAMHSA's wellness inventory. I think it's like a 56 item scale. And some of my answers across some of the domains were I had not thought of this. Like I was not well in certain domains, just purely because I didn't know what I needed to do to be well, or that domain would be important, like an important part of wellness. Yeah, and so you're so right. You can be in like a hustling stage where you feel like you're expending a lot of energy, like in certain areas. But recognizing that if you let other areas run empty, it's probably going to be more of a difficult task to get those areas back up and running. You're going to have to expend a whole lot more time and energy to revisit connections, right, with people who you've neglected because you've needed to prioritize self. So having that awareness, but then also adaptability, that's a skill, right, that we talk of. Being able to be flexible sometimes with your time so that you don't let those levels run down, and that you can pay, even if it's a little bit of attention, to areas that you're not watering.
Yeah, I love that. When I started creating this company, I had a friend approach me and he was like, "Oh, Daniel, you're gonna get burnt out, and like if you ever need somebody to come to and just like replenish your battery, like that's cool." And I I thought about what he said, and I was like, I really appreciate that, but I actually try really hard to not let that happen. I have to say, okay, at this time I stopped working, and I structure in the healthy things.
Yeah.
Like it's storming at the moment. Is it nice to get out of the warm, cozy bed and go to gym, in the dark and in the rain? No, it's not always easy. Some days it's easier and some days it's not. But I also appreciate that if I don't do it, then like it's a slippery slope. Oh, then I don't sleep well and I get sick more often. And for me, because I'm trying to like push, push, push the whole time,
Yeah.
I have to, even when I don't want to, focus on those building blocks of wellness and move my time around. And do I get it perfectly all the time? Of course I do. I'm perfect. I mean, obviously not.
We need to stop using the P word. Like we said, this is not going to be about striving for perfection. Daniel.
Sorry, sorry, sorry. No, of course not. I mean, and nobody gets it right all the time. You see these picture perfect people on Instagram, like, oh, all the money and model and this and that. Like, they're also struggling with stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I see we have a comment here from Leonie. My well-being priorities certainly have changed in different stages of my life. In my 60s now, and peace and a deeper connection with myself, with my husband and others, and my physical health is important.
Mm.
I love that. Appreciating the stages of life, what's important. Um, sure. Lisa, what are your thoughts on that? This is your mother sharing this brilliant wisdom.
You'll actually notice this of me. I connect so well with kids and with people who are older, 10 years plus than me. And I think it's just because I have this, I kind of observe them in adoration because they really, really embrace certain aspects of our wellness that I think we let fall by the wayside a little bit. when we're in the hustle stages, right? When we're young adulting and when we're, middle adulting. And I think it's important to recognize that change. You're going to be hustling, like at certain points. So give yourself kind of grace in that. Try not to let the levels fall too low, in places that, inevitably are going to be a little bit more neglected, where you're focusing on things that are going to help you achieve your goals. But observe it and have perspective. So recognize the ingredients, the key ingredients that do lead to happiness later on, right? So listen to grandparents, like listen to older people. I promise you, like the best conversations that I've had are probably with people who are near the end of their life or in the last stage of life, where they've lived it and they tell stories. Like I said, I love storytelling. I love people's stories. I like listening to young people's stories and to old people's stories because it helps me put things into perspective and realize that it's okay. The jars they'll start to fill again. Like, keep that positive outlook, get through the hustle period. It's all part of the process. So that's what I have to say to that.
I love that. So I just got a question here. How can we define success in a way that makes us happy and healthy? It's such a great question, and it connects with the second point there. When is enough enough?
Yeah.
And what does success look like? And it's so individualized. It's impacted by our culture, by our religion, by our, like all these things. For some people, it's having a super yacht and billions of dollars, like a sort of like Bruce Wayne kind of character.
Yeah.
And for others, it's a big family and being with people that matter. And my partner and I started watching a show about like homesteading, and maybe success for us is having a homestead and raising some goats and stuff, and
having that basil patch, like that is my dream. Trying to homestead.
And it also constantly changes. What we wanted as a child, what we want as young adults, what we want, as we're reaching the primes of our careers, whatever the hell that looks like. Success is different. Success is, looking after your baby girl. Success is trying to get your startup to the moon. Success is helping somebody. Success is being a good parent. Or looking after your parents when they're unwell. So I wonder what you think about this question, Lisa.
I love this question. It's a difficult question in that it is so individualized, but something that I have to comment on, right, is the small wins piece. I think I saw it like an Instagram reel once. It said I got outside today, I drank water, and I had something to eat that I enjoyed, that I liked. And that looked like a successful day for that person. And I personally struggle with this, celebrating the small wins. That's how you actually build resilience, self-efficacy, because you can revisit the small wins and be like, oh, I actually overcame that day. Like I got through, right? And reinforce this idea that I can get through it again, right? When we break our goals up into small bite-sized nuggets, it's easier to accomplish those small bite-sized nuggets while keeping the bigger goal kind of in your perspective, and that it's there. Celebrate the small steps along the way. That actually builds the resilience and the skills that you need to reach your overall eventual goal. I'm guilty of not doing this as much. I'm a private person. I don't like putting on display like certain achievements. I don't like boasting. My dad does that for me. He posts all of my achievements on Facebook. When my dad got Facebook, guys, oh my goodness.
I love it, Dad. Do it. Up, Dad. Celebrate.
But actually, I've learned, over the last couple of years, actually in my 30s, it's actually really important to reflect on the small successes, on the things that you've accomplished for the day. Because life is so fast that we forget sometimes, like everything that we've done to lead us to the certificate or to lead us to the degree or to lead us to run the 5K. We forget how hard it was because like all you see is like the end result. But it took a lot to get there. And so that's my piece of advice. Celebrate the small wins and the small successes.
Yeah, I love that. Jordan Peterson talks about, not to plug Jordan here, not that he needs it, but he talks about setting the bar appropriately.
Yeah.
What does happiness look like to you? Where do you want to go? And set in an appropriate level. You're not going to go from can barely run 5Ks to being, an ultra marathon runner in like 2 days. That's not going to happen. So what is success? How does it look? How do I inch towards it? How do I have grace when I struggle? Who can I lean on? Those are super important building blocks. And then appreciating those wins. I came across something, and I'm guilty of this. You said you're guilty of it. Remember back when you wish you had the thing you now have, and I'm not saying it right, but like there were days when I was like, if I can just get into university, and then I got in and I was like, oh, okay. And then, wow, those people who have a doctorate, they must be so happy and well put together. And, like life normalizes quite quickly. And then it's next. And wellness is attached to that, or connected to that. Focusing on what's important, finding that balance, resting when you need to.
For sure. I think a great word, like this person has posted, like how can we define success in a way that makes us happy and healthy? And I think like the word define, like you could replace that by like measure. And you can choose your own tool of measurement. Like, how do I measure my success? So if like it's so individualized that if I manage to walk around the block and I haven't even managed to get outside in the past month, like I'm measuring my success according to what I've done historically. It's not measuring my success based on what marathon runners are doing or how the Olympic athletes are like taking 2 minutes to run 3Ks. The measurement is based on what I've been able to accomplish. And that's how you build on those skills. So I think that's an important thing to note is your measurement is according to yourself. You can compare yourself and strive, towards like the peak of human potential and like try to reach those big goals and, tread the unknown. But we forget to use ourselves. Like, don't look outwardly. Look at yourself first and use it as a starting point, at least.
100%.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for attending, and of course, Dr. Lisa Augustine for being our amazing co-host. So much wisdom. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending. If you haven't checked out our app already, I encourage you to check it out. Let us know what you think, and hopefully you join us for the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye, everyone.